Today we're going to just take some notes. This is all review over the past 4 sections we've done, and the information that we're reviewing today is all information you're going to need to know for your quiz on Monday and your test on Wednesday. So if you understand today's review lesson, you should do great on the quiz. If you don't feel like you understand it, just spend some extra time. You can either rewatch the YouTube videos or you can just look back at the notes that we've taken or just glance through your math book. Any of those things would be great ways to help you. So let's look at the first one. We're finding the absolute value. The first one has asked us to find the absolute value of negative 16. Alexis, what do you think that answer is? Just 16, you are correct. Okay, remember you cannot have a negative absolute value. Let's go on to the next one. This one's a little trickier. Who thinks they would know what this is? It's saying what is the negative absolute value of 3/4? What do you think, Hunter?
3/4.
Okay, he says 3/4. Would you guys agree or disagree?
Agree.
Disagree.
I heard a disagree. Why do you disagree? What do you think?
Because the negative is outside the absolute value.
Notice here, good observation. The negative is outside the absolute value. So I cannot let that just disappear because I just want it to disappear. So what should I do to that negative?
Bring it down.
You simply bring it down. Now, this part was correct. The absolute value of 3/4 is 3/4, but we have to remember to bring that negative sign down. So the answer would be negative 3/4. Any questions on how we did that? Because you're going to want to know that for your quiz. All right, let's go on to the next one. Is this considered a double negative?
Yes.
It is not, and here's why. These right here are what are those two little things called? Absolute value. So when you're doing absolute value, what this is asking is for the negative absolute value of -5. So that's not considered a double negative unless we're adding and subtracting integers. Right now we're not adding and subtracting integers. So what should I do to this outside negative?
Bring it down.
Just bring it down. There's nothing I can do as far as getting it to disappear. Now let's just go ahead and look at this next part. What is the absolute value of -5? Just plain old 5. So I'm going to bring down a 5, and what is my final answer? -5. Any questions on how to find the absolute value? Okay, there will be different kinds of examples that look very similar to that on your quiz. Moving on to the next one. Copy and complete the statement using less than, greater than, or equal to. On the left side, I have a fraction. On the right side, I have a what? A decimal. So we're going to end up making those look similar. But first thing I want to do is I want to get rid of the absolute value of that part. So we're going to go ahead and just drop down the half, bring down the blank. And what is the absolute value of -4.5? Just 4.5. So now you can see as I compare these two, one is a fraction, one is a decimal. You could turn them both to fractions, you could turn them both to decimals. If I wanted to turn this into a decimal, what would 1/2 be? 0.5 or 0.50, either one is correct. And then just drop this down. Looking at that, read it to me from left to right. What would it say? 0.5 is... Is it less than or more than 4.5? I'm hearing both. What's the whole number in front of my 0.5? A 0. So what's bigger, 0.5 or 4.5?
4.5.
Okay, so read it to me now from left to right. What should it say? 0.5 is less than 4.5. Excellent job. Now remember, you want to take that answer all the way up to your original problem, and just in the original problem, we'll go ahead and box the answer in. Is there anyone who feels comfortable to do problem B for us? Taylor, what is the absolute value of -6? 6 is correct. What is the negative absolute value of 6? -6. He dropped down his negative, and then the absolute value of 6 was just plain old 6. Now, Taylor, read it to me from left to right.
6.
Okay, but what sign should go in there? 6 is... 6 is greater than negative 6. Very good job. Then we bump it right up there into our original problem. And we know the absolute value of negative 6 is greater than the negative absolute value of 6. Thank you, Taylor. Good job. Looking at the next one, we have gone over our song. We have learned this super well. Remind me of the rules. How's it go? Same sign, add and keep. Different sign, subtract. Take the sign of the larger number, then you'll be exact. There was one other saying that we went over that we have said many times. Say it with me. Every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. All right, so let's look at the first one. 4 plus negative 5. We have talked about ways to eliminate the double signs. Whenever you're adding a negative, what does that mean? What always wins, the positive or the negative? The negative sign always wins. When I'm adding a negative, it just means I'm subtracting. So basically, I can get rid of that plus sign right there and drop everything else down. What does it say? 4, no, read from left to right. 4 minus 9. You cannot just switch the order around because you want to, okay? You keep the numbers exactly the same. We were just able to eliminate the positive because every time we add a negative, it means we're subtracting the number. So now I've got 4 and minus 9. Same sign or different sign? Different sign. The 4 is positive, the 9 is negative because remember, the sign is directly in front of the number. Since I have different signs, what should I do? Subtract and take. What's my answer? Negative 5. Nikki, let's go on to the next one, problem B. What should I do for problem B? Okay, why can I change those two negative signs to a positive? We can change it because it's a double negative. So you are correct. We're going to change both of those double negative signs into a positive. Instead of saying 16 plus 4, Nikki, what does that mean?
16 plus 4.
Good job. And what's my answer?
21.
Double check. 16 plus 4. All right, 20 is correct. Box it in. Moving on to the next one, you can see here we have a mixed number. But when you look at this one right here, this is just a fraction. So I'd like to turn my mixed number into a fraction. Madison, how do I do that? Very good. 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3. So we have, bring down, first of all, you want to bring down your negative, and then you have negative 3 halves. Now, we've talked about this. We just talked about it a second ago. We are adding a negative. What does that mean I'm doing? When you add a negative, that just means you're subtracting it, okay? So you're getting rid of the plus sign and just dropping down the minus because we are subtracting 2/5. Whenever I add and subtract fractions, I have to make sure I have a common denominator. What would that be? A 10. So let's figure out, how do I turn this 2 into a 10?
Make it 10 times, multiply it by 5.
Multiply it by 5. If I multiply the bottom by 5, I have to be fair and multiply the top by 5. Now let's look at this number. How do I get that 5 to turn into a 10? Multiply it by 2 on top and on bottom. So let's figure out what our equivalent fractions are. This first one right here, what would negative 3 halves be when I multiply by 5?
Negative 15.
Okay, very good. I'm keeping the negative, negative 15 tenths. Once again, I had a minus sign right here, so I'm going to just drop down the minus sign. And what would this be? 2/5 times 2 over 2? That is equivalent to 4 tenths. Now let's look at our fractions. Do I have the same sign or a different sign? Same sign. Look, negative 15 tenths minus 4 tenths. Every number has a sign, and that sign is directly in front of that number. So these are both negatives. If I have the same sign, what do? Add and keep. So 15 tenths plus 4 tenths is what? 19 tenths. Now, keep the sign. Was that positive or negative? Negative. Instead of thinking, yay, I am finished, can someone tell me what I need to do to this answer? I need to make it back to being a mixed number, okay? Because if you look back here, my original problem was a mixed number. That means I expect to see your final answer as a mixed number also. Can anyone tell me what you think that would be as a mixed number? What do you think?
Negative 1 and 9 tenths.
Thank you for remembering. We keep our negative. It is negative 1 and 9 tenths. Very good. All right, as I just walked around, so many of you had the correct answer. A couple made some silly mistakes. Do I have a same sign or a different sign? Different sign. So what do I do? Subtract and take. When I do that, take the sign of the larger number. This is where people forgot. This was the larger number, so my answer has to be negative 5.66. For number 4, it is asking us to find the distance between two numbers. You can use a number line if you need. I'm always fine if you want to use your paper to write in extra things to help you get the answer. When we do this, do you guys remember we always start with what kind of a number? The big number, and I have to take away which number? The smaller number, okay? So looking at this, I'm trying to find the distance between 4 and negative 2. What's the big number between those two? 4. And then remember, I will always subtract the smaller number. What does the smaller number say? Negative 2. Nehemiah, what do I have here? A double negative. So what do I do to a double negative? Make it a positive. So this instead, remember you always want to rewrite. This is how you show work. I'll be looking for work to be shown on your quizzes. Instead of saying 4 plus 2, what will I say?
4 plus 2.
4 plus 2. Nehemiah, what's the answer? 6 is correct. All right, so remember, if we were to do some kind of a number line and you saw I had these different numbers, if this was negative 2, negative 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, what you just did here was you were trying to find the difference between 4 and negative 2. If I had counted 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I could see there is 6 spaces in between them, or you can simply do the work just like we did right there without the number line. I would like you to try to do problem B on your own. Okay. Do you guys remember what I said about how to find the distance between two numbers? You take the which number? The biggest number, and you subtract what? The smallest number. What's my biggest number here? 5.8. What's my smallest number? 3.3. Many of you just thought, I'm going to add it. Remember, the only reason we added last time was because we had a double negative. You always, when finding the distance, you take the big number and subtract the small number. Guys, what's the distance between these two? 2.5. How many of you would say you got that on your own the first try? All right, just remember, biggest number minus the smallest number. On to the next one. Remember, this is a plug it in kind of situation. I want you to try to do 5A on your own. Okay, so evaluate the expression when A equals negative 8, B equals 4, and C equals negative 1. First thing that I think gets people tricked up the most is they forget about these signs that are here. There's a negative sign and there's a positive sign. So sometimes it works good if you just drop those signs down right now. I know I have negative A, and I know I will be adding C. So I'm going to just change my color, and I'll go ahead and put it in green. What is A?
Negative 8.
Negative 8. I'm just going to put parentheses so I can see that's the negative 8 is the number. Main thing is a lot of you guys forgot to bring this negative down. Now, what is C? Negative 1. The hardest part for some seems to be just plugging in the numbers like that. Here I've got negative 8. What does that turn into?
You gotta put positive.
It turns into a positive because a double negative is always a positive. What's another way to say plus 8?
8 plus 1.
Just plain old 8, okay? Now, we've talked a lot about this. I have plus a negative number. Who always wins? Negative. So if I'm adding a negative number, it simply means I am subtracting. And then you bring your 1 down. What is 8 minus 1? 7. Raise your hand if you got it. Okay, good job. when I plug it in, okay, for me, I'm just going to drop down my minus sign because it seems to be easier when I do it that way. First things first, instead of a C, what will I put?
-1.
Negative 1. And instead of a B, what will I put? 4. Who would say you got this far? Okay. Repeat after me. Every number has a sign? And that sign is directly in front of that number. For all of you guys that told me that your answer was 3, you forgot that rule. Look at this. Same sign or different sign, guys? Same sign. Add the numbers. 1 plus 4 is 5. Keep the sign. It was a negative sign. So the answer should have been -5. Modeling real life. A bird begins its flight 33 feet above the ground. Okay, so let's just imagine his flight is happening up here at 33 feet. A lot of time visual pictures can help you. Then it decides to dive underneath the water. How far? 9. If it goes underneath, is it positive or negative? Negative. So this is -9 feet. What is the distance the bird traveled? If you remember what we talked about before, when finding the distance between two things, you take the biggest number and subtract the smallest number. So I want to see work. You cannot just throw an answer there. You've got to show me work. On a test or a quiz, I have to see work. So I have my biggest number, and I'm going to subtract my smallest number. Now you can see I have double negative 33 plus 9 equals what, guys?
Positive
42. Now listen, this is a story problem or a modeling real life, so you have to have units attached. What is the answer? 42 feet. As I just walked around, many of you did not have that. Who would say you subtracted 33 minus 9? You forgot that below the water is not 9 feet. It is -9 feet. So just remember, when things go down below the ground, it goes into a negative. Your bank account has a balance of $30. So we know we are starting off with 30 bucks. You withdraw $65 from your account. If I withdraw, is that positive or negative? Negative. I'm taking it away. So minus $65. What is your new balance? Write an expression. Let me explain to you what an expression is. That's just when you're adding or subtracting something and you have an equal sign with an answer. So guys, looking at this, do I have the same sign or a different sign? Different sign. What do I have to do? Subtract and take. What is 30 minus 65? 35. Okay. Take the sign of the larger number, which was negative. So your answer is?
$35.
As I said, with modeling real life or with story problems, you always have to make sure that you have some kind of units. What do you think my units are in this problem? The dollar sign. So when it's a money problem, those are your units. If you understand this, then you're going to do great on your quiz on Monday. If some of this was a struggle, go back through, just review it, go over it so that you do better for your quiz on Monday.